Hi, I'm Casey, and I'm with REEcycle, a company solving the biggest problem that you've never heard of. My story begins with my background in electronics recycling. A dirty industry? Yes, but someone's got to do it. My initial focus used to be on the millions of cell phones that are discarded on an annual basis. But that quickly changed when I discovered an even bigger issue facing the electronics recycling market. Before I get to the beginning, I need to talk about the end, but don't worry, we'll come back. There's a product in your life that is so important that you probably have no idea of. It's called rare earth magnets, also known as neomagnets. These neomagnets are inside of your cell phones, hard drives, and they make clean energy more efficient in electric motors, wind turbines, and even Toyota Priuses. So what are these neomagnets? Well, neomagnets are made with two rare earth elements known as neodymium and dysprosium. So when I looked at this market, I discovered two issues before I even heard about the issues facing rare earth elements. I knew two things about the electronics recycling market. One was that millions of electronics were discarded every year with very inefficient methods for recycling them. And two, that there was precious resources that were locked inside these materials that we were simply throwing away. So one day, I was approached by two members of the chemistry department at the University of Houston who had discovered a solution that would overcome both of these problems. When I discovered that they were filing a patent around this, I became very interested, and we started to look further into this market. And what we found left us a little bit uneasy. China controls over 90% of the production of these precious resources. And as famously quoted by Deng Xiaoping, the former leader of China, the Middle East has oil, China has rare earth elements. And we will use them as an economic and political weapon whenever necessary, restricting exports to any country that they so choose. So I said I'd come back to the beginning. And my beginning is a focus on maximizing the value and the resources that we are discarding in electronics. So with these rare earth elements, you would have to expect these rare earth resources are being used by the manufacturers of these technologies. So they should want them back. There should be some value in that. So we decided to address this value and see what we had on our hands. And what we saw was that the total value of these 17 rare earth elements was estimated to be $7 billion a year. When you look closer, however, you'll see that two of these elements, neodymium and dysprosium, make up over 50% of this value, or more than $3 billion a year, a huge pain point for a tiny portion of this market. So we decided to test some of our assumptions. Our initial assumption was that some of these end manufacturers that are making these electronics would want some of these resources back. We also thought that they would want a secure supply of these rare earth elements outside of the restrictions set by China. We had one of our first key resources, our patented process, and we were ready to continue testing. So our next test was to see how could we get these materials to them, how we needed to contact them. So after contacting several of these companies, one of them being Siemens Technology, we instantly realized that we had two issues on our hands. One, we needed to further separate and purify these rare earth materials before they could ever be used in end products. And two, these rare earth elements would be put into neomagnets before the end manufacturers ever saw them. So we quickly realized that we were wrong. These end manufacturers would not be our customers, but they made great partners because of their invaluable insight. We quickly found out that our customers would be rare earth purification and separation companies, or at least that was our assumption. So it's time to test it. We went onto the market and started approaching some of these companies. One of them was Avalon Rare Metals. Avalon Rare Metals immediately agreed to a letter of intent stating that they would purchase as much of our rare earth mixture as we could produce because of the demand that they had for these materials. They also gave us an estimated price point, 50% of current market value. So we took this back and put it on our canvas. We now knew that separation purification companies would be our customers, and we had some part of our revenue stream. We knew that we could get 50% of market prices, which equaled $32 of rare earth elements for every kilogram of magnets that we put through our process. So it's time to continue testing. One of our assumptions was that we could get an endless supply of these neomagnets. Well, we initially focused on hard drives, electric motors, and wind turbines, all of the areas that these are used. We quickly realized after some of our discussions with these manufacturers that this was not the case. These electric motors and wind turbines had a much longer life cycle than computer hard drives. So we needed to pivot. We focused our attention solely on the magnets extracted from hard drives. Although the wind turbines and electric motors weren't out of the picture, it it was further on the horizon, so we needed to focus on today. So now that we knew our key activities would be extracting these neomagnets and processing them, we needed to see how could we acquire these supplies, how could we get these drives? Well, once again, an assumption of ours was that we would be able to approach electronics recyclers and add revenue to their streams, add an additional revenue stream. After 8 weeks and speaking with over 25 electronics recycling companies, we discovered that they were shredding these neomagnets as part of their data destruction process for hard drives, wasting these neomagnets and receiving about 60 cents per kilogram as contaminated scrap. We now knew what price point we had to beat, pretty low, and we knew that electronics recyclers would be some of our key partners. We knew our key resource would be these computer hard drives. So what would they cost? What would we have to pay these companies? How were they incentivized? Well, after talking to some of these companies, we agreed on a price point of about $7 per kilogram. After further testing, though, and speaking to them a bit further about what they were doing, they said we need the price point to be closer to $10. This will cover our removal of the magnets, the shipping to your facility, and the additional profit that we need to incentivize us to go after this. Okay? So we put that into our business canvas. And we put that into our assumptions and saw that we were still profitable at $10 per kilogram. The next step was the single biggest pivot for our company to date. REEcycle did not feel confident that these recyclers would be able to keep up with the demand that we would be putting them under. So we needed to get around this. After endless discussions with robotics engineers, mechanical engineers, machinists from top manufacturers, and even members of the JPL, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory at NASA, we were able to design a system to extract these neomagnets. REEcycle is now prototyped and trade secreted this system, and we'll be keeping it within our facility, allowing us to extract these magnets and relieving us of the stress of the electronics recyclers. This pivot was the single biggest competitive advantage that our company has gained to date. From here, we needed to prove that we could scale. We knew we had the process, we knew we had the supplies. How are we going to scale this? Well, Avalon Rare Metals provided us with a spec sheet showing the purities of the materials that we would need to be sending to them. Using this, we discovered 3 more issues. 1, too much iron was leaching into our mixture, contaminating the rare earth elements. And 2, we needed to be able to demagnetize these magnets before putting them into our process. The third step, or the third issue, was that we needed to remove the plating of these magnets before they would ever work in our process. I can say that after 7 months of extensive research, our company overcame all 3 of these hurdles. For the first, our company was able to come up with an addition to our process that resulted in the second filing of a patent. For the other 2 issues, our company designed an ingenious system that allows us to demagnetize, deplate, crush, and process a kilogram of magnets for about $8 per kilogram. So we went back to the canvas and added that to our cost structure. We now understood our key activities, how that would impact our cost structure and our revenues, and we knew who our purchasers of these products would be, separation and purification companies. REEcycle needed to gain some more traction in the market. We needed some more advice from some of these industry stakeholders. REEcycle to date has been able to gain traction with companies like Siemens, Shell, and Seagate, who have all been excited about what we are doing and how we may be able to impact their companies in the future. Some of the traction to date through our interviews, we've done 120 interviews with electronics recyclers. Especially with my hands-on experience, we've been able to see all the ins and outs of this magnet recycling process. We've done supply chain development with the 2nd largest electronics recycler in the nation, Avnet. We have 1 letter of intent that's been agreed upon by Avalon, and we're looking for 2 more. 1 from Molycorp, a big producer in the US, and another from Solvay, a huge recycler of phosphor powders containing rare earth elements, in Europe. We've had over 40 interviews with multinational corporations that have been invaluable to our success. Some of the additional company validation is Seagate's sustainability department actually reaching out to us to try to figure out how they can better process their end-of-life materials. They're looking for ways to maximize or to lessen their impact on the environment. We've been contacted by top executives within rare earth mining and separation companies, including Ucore and Solvay. And we've continued our discussions with Siemens Technology to Business, who's proving invaluable in the future of our company by allowing us to see what the future may hold for electric motors and wind turbines. We are REEcycle, and we are renewing the rarities that drive our lives. Thank you.
So I thought this was a great presentation. I'm kind of curious about you kind of ended up where you started, at least with the customer segments of rare earth processing customers as customers. But I thought you came up with an interesting insight just before you ended that I was waiting for you to maybe tell me there's another pivot, which was, it turns out that there's VPs of sustainability at almost every large, at least U.S. corporation, I would assume globally as well, and that almost every large corporation now is worrying about end of life.
Right.
And it might just be, I just want to observe, and this is just an observation for you to think, is that the rare earth processing part might be the first of a series of vertical things you do for sustainability in a much, much bigger business that you might be sitting on. I mean, I think you've done the great example of how to knock off a very tough vertical sustainability one that you ran the numbers and ran the scale, but there might be huge sets of these verticals, maybe even ones bigger than the ones you've thought about. So just think about that as an, just as a concept. And just I want to remind everybody is usually you start with one product, but a product almost never, though there are exceptions, is the company. A company over time is a series of products that sometimes get you from one place to another. So I would just want to say congratulations. I learned a lot. Alexander?
I think it was a clear presentation, so I'll leave some space to the other judges.
You punted.
What kind of impact are you going to be having on the rare earth marketplace?
Right.
What percentage do you think you'll be able to deliver? And
It's been stated by the Department of Energy that only 1% of rare earth elements are being recycled, but 20% of total demand could be met through recycling. So we're working to meet that number. We definitely won't be a huge player with all the mining operations that are going on, but our goal is to be a sustainable, secure supply of these rare earth elements. One of the problems that China is having is they're growing so fast that they're consuming these for their own use. So even though they've stated these things in the past that they're going to use them as a strategic weapon and things of that nature, they're really consuming so much of them that they don't have enough left for other countries. The issue with neodymium and dysprosium is China is one of the only places that you can actually get those resources. So in terms of total impact to the rare earth market, it'll be a little bit smaller than our impact to the neodymium and dysprosium market, which is much more relevant to some of the technologies.
So great presentation, really enjoyed it. So as you're walking us through, I was interested on the pivot that you made, kind of saying, hey, look, we've got these suppliers on the cost structure side that we don't think they can scale with us, but they were kind of out of the box able to deliver a product that you could add value to, but then sell. I was interested that you've developed some interesting proprietary technology. I think that probably changes your go-to-market strategy pretty dramatically in terms of how much money you have to raise. Maybe talk us through your logic there. There can be some value in maybe going to market with more of an MVP that isn't perfect cost structure-wise while you're developing that proprietary process. I see the long-term benefit, but to me it felt like it really upped the risk level in your ability to go to market. So maybe walk us through that.
It does in some ways, and something that I wasn't able to fit in this presentation is that we've now been, we approach an MRI recycler, the largest MRI machine recycler in the US, that's willing to provide us with 20 tons of magnets as soon as we're ready for commercial scale. So there are other options for these materials. The hard drives, dealing with these electronics recyclers was one of the biggest issues, how spread out they are. It's much easier for us to acquire those hard drives. But it is a great point. We do need to focus on that. How do we get that started? One of the other areas that's allowing us to cut down that initial cost is the opportunity to get agreements from our customers, contracts that will allow us to front that cash flow to be able to provide them with these products. We're also looking into potentially getting consignment from these electronics recyclers because they usually run on a 3-month cycle anyway. So we might be able to completely float that cost if we're able to scale and process fast enough.
I think it's a unique experiment here where the knowledge you gain by following the process that really has been described by these gentlemen has created almost a ton of the value, right? And the way you solve it is important, but the knowledge is really powerful here. Right. So great job.
All right, that's all the time we have for questions. Let's thank REEcycle.